Today I'm redrawing this cute little frog, but more importantly, I will show you the drawing techniques that really help me improve my skills, more than anything else. If you have ever struggled with sketching or choosing colors for your drawings, these tips hopefully will help you too. Before we start, if you want to follow along, please make sure you use a thick paper so that it allows multiple layers. So, before I start sketching, I always spend a little time just observing the reference. I make a rough plan in my head. For example, with this picture, I decided not to draw the water droplets. I feel like the image is already pretty complex and I really don't want to add even more complexity to it. Then I look for any tricky areas where I'm not exactly sure what is happening there. For example, here I would say it's this triangle on the side of the body, and I'm also not completely sure what's going on with the frog's little feet here. Most of the time I prefer simplifying such areas. Also, pay attention to the lighting. Where is the light coming from? The brightest areas usually give you a really good clue. So in this case, I think the light is coming from above, from the top, and maybe slightly from the right, but not too much. Otherwise, we would see more highlights on this side, on the right side. Instead, most of the brightest areas are on the top surfaces. Now, let's start with the pencil sketch. So, this is the first tip that really helped me improve as an artist. Before drawing any details, first mark the overall size of your subject. This gives you an important reference point that everything else will be based on. Here I'm drawing a square because if you look closely, the flower and the frog together form almost a perfect square. Now, every other part of the drawing will fit inside the square, and its position and size will be determined by the first shape. The next step is to look for simple shapes: circles, rectangles, triangles, ovals, or straight lines. Don't look at the reference picture and think, that's a frog. Instead, look at it as a collection of simple shapes. And our brain is really good at filling in the blanks. It wants to tell you, hey, that's a frog, instead of letting you see the actual shapes. And you have to train yourself to see those shapes like circles, rectangles, like instead of animals, flowers, but with practice you will get there. I cannot emphasize enough how much this approach actually helped me with developing my sketching skills. And so let's look at this picture. What do I see here? I see two rectangles, these two petals, and the frog's head. Now, I will mark the approximate position inside my square. Now, this petal on the left is more like a triangle, and the one above it is an oval. The frog's body is another rectangle, and the frog's two legs over here are basically rectangles as well. The frog's little fingers are tiny ovals, and the left eye is a perfect round shape. And the right eye is almost like a triangle combined with half of an oval. And just like that, I work from the biggest shapes down to the smallest ones. And I'm not drawing a frog, I'm drawing a collection of simple shapes. And I can already start refining those shapes, adding smaller details. And by the way, one more thing that is incredibly important during this exercise is keeping track of your reference points. Here is what I mean by that. Whenever you place a new shape, compare its position and its size to the shapes you've already created, to the ones that you have already drawn. For example, these two square-shaped petals on the right take up about 2/3 of the space inside my main square. The frog's left eye, or rather this like round shape, ends roughly where the middle petal ends too. The fingers on the left leg also end around the same point. And for example, the frog's head and body together are about the same height as the petals underneath them. These reference points will help you to draw more accurately. Better, shapes, better sizes, and then overall your picture that your drawing will improve. And by the way, it doesn't mean that you cannot make adjustments if it improves, the composition or if it makes the drawing process easier. For example, here I want to make this upper right petal just a little bit bigger because I'm worried it will be too difficult for me to color if this petal is too small. Because of those curves in its shape, it may be really challenging to color those highlights and those shades. And by the way, try to keep your graphite sketch really light so that you can erase it easily without damaging the paper. If you rough up the paper too much with your eraser, the alcohol marker ink will spread sideways, and it will be much harder for you to stay inside the lines. And this is a great example of how reference points work. I could recognize that one eye was a bit too far away from the other, so now I can fix it. Much better now, isn't it? I just love drawing plants and flowers because you really can't make mistakes there. Flowers come in all shapes and sizes, and I'm not trying to create a photorealistic drawing anyway. I'm just trying to capture the overall feeling. Because flowers are very forgiving in that regard. A couple of curves here and there, and voila, this is a petal. I'm trying to place the flower's stem so that it comes from the center, otherwise it will look a bit odd. I really like outlining with colored pencils because alcohol markers covers them very well, unlike graphite, which is always visible through the ink. And today I'm using my favorite polychromos pencils. If you're drawing along with me, again, check out the list of art supplies in the description. I'm using a purple pencil for the flower and a yellow-green for the frog. Okay, now that we've finished the sketch and the outline, it's time to talk about color. I also studied the color palette. Color wheels can be really helpful here. As you can see, this is a perfect example of a complementary color palette. Purple sits directly across from yellow-green on the color wheel, which means these colors naturally create a really strong contrast and they look fantastic together. Well, first, I just tried to guess which colors I need, and I swatched them before I start coloring. That way, I already have my color swatches and they're ready to go. So these are the colors I thought I might need, and I didn't use all of them, by the way. And these are the ones I actually ended up using. It is a much smaller selection. I used to struggle a lot with choosing colors. I even took a couple of one-on-one classes with an art tutor because I would look at the reference photo and I have absolutely no idea which markers to pick. Unfortunately, the typical advice that I used to get was the more you draw, the easier it gets. But honestly, that just didn't click for me. How am I supposed to get better if I don't really understand what I'm doing? What finally helped me was learning not to look again at the picture as a whole. Instead, I focus on small sections of the reference. I usually just zoom in until I stop seeing the entire picture and I start seeing nothing but blocks and blobs of color. Trust the colors you actually see. And now let's start coloring. You can find all of the materials in the description as well as the link to the color swatches. And if you're just getting started with alcohol markers, always begin with the lightest color. A light color is easy to darken later, but a dark color is much harder, if not impossible, to fix. I'm starting with the bright green yellow to mark those highlights, and I'm covering the rest of the frog with a super light green color. I think this color is called Mignonette in COPIC collection. Honestly, I had to Google how to pronounce it. I've also noticed that I sometimes overuse filler words like or honestly, or or kind of, and it happens mostly when I'm thinking about something else while I'm drawing or doing something else, or if I don't have my notes prepared and I have to improvise. And of course, English isn't my native language, that also contributes, so it's just something I'm actively trying to improve. Now I'm picking a darker color but still quite light, and I start building the contrast. Don't forget to leave the highlights uncovered. And always go back to the previous color to smoothen the edges. I am recording this video while I'm on vacation, a small break from work. I didn't go anywhere and I decided to finish some of the stuff in the garden and in the house. And I thought it would be fun and easy, but somehow I'm so busy and so overwhelmed that it almost feels like another full-time job. And even though I completed quite a few tasks that I really needed and wanted to complete, I feel a bit sad because I didn't have and don't have more time for drawing and for making videos, and somehow I imagined it would be a bit different. Also, considering how much time some of these tasks take, no wonder I ended up with this really big to-do list. Now I want to color the belly, and as you can see, it is some kind of light beige color. And I still have no clue how to pronounce the word beige. And for the little legs, I'm picking a bright yellow color. With these tiny feet of the frog, I honestly can't even tell what's going on in the reference. So I'm just simplifying this part. I draw what I know I can draw, and that's fine. Now, I definitely want to build more contrast and use darker colors for those legs. And again, don't cover the entire leg, just leave the highlights. You may be wondering why I started with the lightest color, though it was pretty obvious from the start that that color was too light. The thing is, when I just start my drawing, it's really hard to judge the value relationships between the colors, to see exactly how dark the shadows should be compared to the highlights. So I always put down my lightest colors first, and then I gradually build on top of them. Those light layers help me plan my next steps. And don't forget to go back to the lighter colors to create smoother transitions between the shades. And that's exactly why I'm using such thick paper for blending. And now comes one of the trickiest parts, the perfectly round eye. Heads up, if drawing perfect circles isn't your strong suit, have a matching acrylic marker nearby ready, just in case you need to fix anything. I will definitely need my Artix acrylic pens. I also want to add a bit more dark color to the right eye, because this area is in the shadows from the eye itself actually. And here around the mouth, I really need a thin, precise line. It doesn't always work out for me. And this time wasn't an exception. I'm using a light beige marker, specifically the chisel nib, to push that color and that ink upward. And I think the top of the head could also use a bit more contrast. Right now, it looks a little too flat. You know what? Sometimes I run out of things to say while I'm drawing and coloring. But it seems like viewers here on YouTube prefer videos with constant voiceovers. But then, it means whatever I'm talking about may have nothing to do with what's actually happening on the screen, because there is only so much I can comment on while coloring. And the legs should also be darker, so let's build up the contrast there too. And of course, don't forget to blend everything together. I actually really like frogs. I have a small artificial pond in my garden, and there are 3 little frogs living there. And every now and then I catch them sunbathing or splashing in the water. They are super cute. They are nowhere near as colorful as this one, obviously. They're just, green with dark spots, but they're still adorable. Watching them became a kind of meditation for me. Now I want to build a bit more contrast and color for those little fitsies. I'm gonna grab darker yellows and orange colors to create some shaded areas. Don't forget to leave the highlights uncolored. They are really small there, but they're still there. I've noticed one funny thing while I'm drawing. I constantly fidget with my markers without even realizing it. And I only noticed it later when I started editing my videos, and it's honestly so annoying. It creates so much unnecessary movement on the screen, and I end up spending a lot of extra time cutting those parts out when I edit the video. Now I'm working on the belly of the frog. If you look at the reference photo, you can see a bit of orange reflected onto the belly from the little legs and the little fingers. Now let's add a bit of contrast to the mouth area. It's also a bit tricky because here it's like really tiny details. Okay, those lines didn't turn out quite the way I wanted them to be. So now I will try to soften them and make this area a little less noticeable. And I'm adding a few dots to suggest, the texture of the skin, but I will actually spend a bit more time on the texture later when I do the final touches. Now I just want to mark where the pupil will... And of course, my hands are already shaking, even though I haven't even started coloring the eyes just yet. I'm going to try doing it with alcohol markers first, even though I don't really have the steadiest hand ever. And also, recording definitely doesn't make it any easier. Okay. And as you can see, the ink spread a little too much. And honestly, I didn't do the best job either. Also, the reason the alcohol ink spread so much here is because I really damaged the paper a little, while erasing. If you remember, I erased the eye and redrawn it a couple of times. And that's exactly why I mentioned earlier that it's important to keep your pencil sketch light. And also when doing the eye and coloring the eye, don't forget to leave one part here uncolored, because there will be a highlight here, like a reflection in the eye. So I'm going to grab my Artix acrylic markers and clean it up. One thing I really like about acrylic markers is that you can sometimes layer alcohol markers over acrylic markers afterward. Just be careful, because it doesn't always work exactly equally well with every brand and every color, but it's worth trying. I wish I had a darker color, but this is the best I have right now. Now that the frog is almost finished, it's time to color the flower. I will still come back to the frog later to add a few final details and to see if I need to add a bit more contrast. I love coloring flowers because coloring flowers is actually pretty straightforward and quite easy, to be honest. Let's start with the lightest areas and then gradually add darker colors towards the base of each petal. Try to color in the direction of the petal from the bottom towards the tip. Because even if your blending isn't perfect, those strokes will naturally resemble, the vines of the flower. Are those vines or veins? But you know what I mean. Now let's cover the entire petal with the base a bit darker mid-tone-ish color. And then grab a bit of a darker color than we initially used for the highlights and blend that mid-tone color, base color, into the lightest color. Again, using those flickering motions. And now rinse and repeat for every single petal. Now that I've finished coloring the frog, I am actually a little nervous about adding the violet petals. I don't want to mess the frog up. By the way, I recently bought a book on botanical illustration, and I think it's called Rewild Your Drawing. So the author's first name is Marta. I can't remember her last name right now, so I will put it on the screen. I was honestly really impressed with the quality of the book, the paper, the print quality, the illustrations, everything feels really well made. I haven't had the time to properly study the book yet. I've only flipped through a few pages, but I'm really looking forward to diving into it and trying some tutorials. What is especially nice is that it's specifically about alcohol markers, which is pretty rare. There aren't many books that focus on alcohol markers as the main medium. And I'm planning to draw a few projects from this book, and I would also like to make a review of the book once I've spent a bit more time with it. And now let's color this really curved petal. It's a bit tricky because you need to make sure that the highlight is still there, but you also need to add more shadow and more contrast to both sides. I don't like coloring curves like this because they do not always turn out well. But this one seems to be going pretty well so far. And now let's repeat the same action for the petals at the bottom. By the way, do you like doing something else while you're drawing or coloring? I've heard that a lot of people like to watch coloring videos while they draw. I do that sometimes too, but most of the time I prefer watching movies or listening to audiobooks. And movies don't always work that well though, because I'm obviously not looking at the screen. Audiobooks, on the other hand, are perfect. Some drawings take 2 or even 3 hours to finish. I can usually just get through an entire audiobook in just a few drawing sessions. And I'm gonna add a bit of a darker color also under the footsies of our frog, because this is where there is additional shadow from the legs, from the feet. And back to the light violet color. And now let's start building up the shadows near the base of the petals. And now I'm introducing 2 more colors to create smoother transition and better blending. So I start with the darkest color, and I work from the bottom of the petal towards the top. And now use a lighter color but still darker than our base color to ensure like a better transition between the darkest color and our base color. And again, just rinse and repeat for all of the other petals. If you're coloring flowers for the first time, you know the petals, it may be a bit tricky to be honest, but trust me, if you practice a bit, like you will get it. Honestly, coloring flowers is really easy. I always find the stage really satisfying when you start adding those deep, saturated colors. It is so nice to see the drawing come to life. You know, the shadows become more defined or the highlights stand out, and suddenly the whole drawing has so much more volume and character. It's funny how I hardly ever use purple or violet colors over the last couple of years, but lately I've been reaching out for those colors more and more. And now this middle petal, honestly, I'm gonna cover just, almost all of it with the darkest color and just create a bit of a highlight, with still quite dark colors in the middle. Why am I adding a bit of lighter color, even though it looks quite dark on the reference picture? It's because if you just fill it with the same color, this part will look quite flat, and I don't want it. And that's why I'm adding a bit of a lighter spot, just to indicate that there is a bit of a light reaching this internal area of the petal. By the way, I am quite proud of myself and I wanted to share this with you because this is literally the first video where everything went right. I mean, recording-wise. The image quality is good, the camera stayed in focus, the whole time. I didn't forget to press the record button because this happened too. I didn't lose any footage, this also happened with me. Nothing is shaky or blurry, so I'm just really happy that the visuals turned out so well this time, and you just can't imagine how frustrating it is to finish recording, only to discover later that some parts of the video are either out of focus or too dark. And the worst part, I can't simply re-record just a few sections, a few parts of the videos, because the drawing is already finished, and if a couple of parts are ruined, you just cannot just hit the record button and re-record the middle of it. One nice thing about this black background is that even if I go over the outline outside of the liner, it really doesn't matter because everything will be covered with black anyway. And now let's grab even darker color and cover the area under the feet of the frog. I don't really see what's going on there, with the flower, but it's almost in complete darkness on the reference picture, so I will just cover it with the darkest color and will just sprinkle a bit of purple color that I used before. And now the stem of the flower, I will use the same colors that I used for the frog. It's really a great idea to reuse the same colors. Don't forget that we have our light source somewhere at the right. The light still reaches the stem of the flower, and the left part will be darker. Okay, hang in there, we're almost done with this drawing. Really nice tip is that you can use complementary colors to create shadows. So this is a bit of a nice feature of the color theory. I'm using the dark purple to create the darkest shade under the flower. And finally, it's time for the dark background. And don't forget to refill your black marker before you start the background. To make sure I do not accidentally color over the flower or the frog, I will start by carefully outlining everything first. I will use the brush nib for the outline. And then I will switch to the broad chisel nib to fill in the larger areas. I'm going to be using COPIC Classic because those markers have really big chisel nibs. And by the way, if you like drawing black or dark backgrounds, I definitely recommend using the widest chisel nib that you can find on the market. Personally, I like using COPIC Classic or also OHUHU markers because they have some of the largest chisel nibs available. The bigger the nib, the easier it is to get smooth, even coverage. Try using circular motions and don't be afraid to go back over the areas you've just covered. That helps eliminate streaks and also gives you really much more solid, like black background color. Now that the background is finished, I see a few small gaps around the edges where the colors just don't blend perfectly into the black background. The easiest way to fix that is just to go back with the original colors and just, blend the edges into the background. And I will do the same for the frog's body. However, I might need to go over this area with my acrylic markers as well. So now that we have all of the colors here and also the background, I really want to deepen the shadows on the lower part of the body of the frog and the legs. So let's go back and use the dark purple color to add those contrasts, just the same way we did with the stem of the flower. And don't forget to go back to the dark green colors to ensure a smooth transition. And just one final touch, I will not be using color pencils for any details, but I will just add a bit of definition to the mouth. I'm going to be using a violet color. Let's add some texture to the skin as final touches. I'm going to be using like dots of lighter and dark green colors. The lighter green dots go to the brightest area, and the darker green dots should stay in the shadows. I think it really brings to life the effect of the skin, the texture of the skin, without spending hours and hours of actually drawing it. Also, because the left part of the eye is a bit in the shadow, it should be a bit darker. Try using a bit darker colors for the left part of the eye. And finally, I'm adding a few details with an acrylic marker. Either pick a light green or yellow-green. Both will work just fine for the little dots on the frog skin. I think I'm going to stop here. I love this illustration. This little dude is so cute. I just adore those little creatures. And now that I have two drawings side by side, both based on the same reference photo, which one do you like better? The black background or the white background? Let me know in the comments, and if you followed along with me or have any questions, let me know in the comments too. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!